It'd be like the most petty, humiliating, yet startling thing if I just fired my...
Ron Howard's journey from a beloved child actor to one of Hollywood's most respected directors is a story filled with nostalgia, inspiration, hidden tension, and emotional resilience. For millions of fans, Ron will always be Opie Taylor, the sweet, red-headed boy from the Andy Griffith Show. But behind the camera, Howard grew into a storyteller of remarkable talent, steering his way through the unpredictable terrain of fame, family, creative integrity, and the sometimes bitter realities of the entertainment industry. This is not just a story about Ron Howard the actor or Ron Howard the director. It is the story of Ron Howard the human being, one who learned early that the smile you see on screen doesn't always reflect the truth behind it. The Andy Griffith Show, which first aired in 1960, wasn't just another television sitcom. It became a cultural touchstone, representing the ideal of small-town America. For 8 seasons and 249 episodes, viewers tuned in to watch the peaceful lives of Mayberry's citizens unfold. Andy Taylor, played by Andy Griffith, was the town's wise, soft-spoken sheriff. Opie Taylor, played by a very young Ron Howard, was his curious and lovable son. Aunt Bee, portrayed by Frances Bavier, kept the Taylor household running with affection, advice, and home-cooked meals. Deputy Barney Fife, brought to life by Don Knotts, provided comic relief with his over-the-top antics and wide-eyed nervousness. On screen, Mayberry was a place of calm, laughter, and family values. But behind the scenes, the story was very different. The cast, though professional, didn't always share the same warmth and camaraderie they displayed on camera. For Ron Howard, the most difficult relationship was with Frances Bavier. Though she played his loving Aunt Bee on the show, Bavier was far from nurturing in real life. Ron would later admit that he found her cold and distant. She treated him not as a child who needed support, but as a professional actor expected to perform. This left a lasting impact on young Ron. One memory, in particular, stood out. During the filming of the episode The Pickle Story, Opie had to eat several jars of Aunt Bee's famously terrible homemade pickles. What the audience never knew was that Ron absolutely hated pickles. Take after take, he forced himself to eat them, sitting across from a co-star who offered no comfort, no smile, just silence. Frances Bavier's behavior wasn't just an issue for Ron. Other cast members and directors found her difficult as well. Howard Morris, who both acted in and directed several episodes, paired working with Bavier to navigating a landmine. Even small requests, like adjusting her position for better camera framing, could provoke an angry response. Despite her immense talent and the vital role she played in the show's success, Bavier kept herself at a distance from the rest of the cast. Andy Griffith, the show's star, also found her behavior challenging. Though he maintained professionalism during the show's run, he later confirmed in an interview that their relationship had been strained. He even recounted a failed attempt to visit her years after the show ended. She refused to let him into her home and spoke to him through a closed door, stating simply, "I never liked Andy Griffith." This revelation was shocking to fans who believed the character's on-screen relationships mirrored real life. Yet, these off-screen tensions never disrupted the show's success. The Andy Griffith Show remained a top-rated program throughout its entire run, ending its final season as the #1 show in America. Don Knotts won 5 Emmys, and Frances Bavier received 1, though Griffith himself never won for his iconic performance. The show's legacy lived on through spin-offs, reruns, and an annual festival held in Andy Griffith's hometown of Mount Airy, North Carolina. Despite the challenges he faced as a child actor, Ron Howard continued to thrive in the entertainment world. After the Andy Griffith Show ended in 1968, he transitioned smoothly into other roles. In 1974, he became Richie Cunningham in the wildly successful sitcom Happy Days. While Henry Winkler's portrayal of the cool, leather jacket-wearing Fonzie stole the spotlight, Ron's Richie grounded the show. Their chemistry, both on and off-screen, became a cornerstone of the series. But even at the height of his acting success, Ron had his sights set on something more: directing. His passion for filmmaking began early. He would often observe directors closely, fascinated by the process of storytelling from behind the lens. In 1977, he got his first big break as a director with the film Grand Theft Auto. Produced under the guidance of Roger Corman, the opportunity came with a condition: Howard had to star in another of Corman's films, Eat My Dust. He agreed, and the rest, as they say, is history. From that point on, Ron Howard's directing career soared. He directed a series of successful television movies before hitting the big screen with Night Shift in 1982, a comedy starring Michael Keaton and Henry Winkler. Then came Splash in 1984, a romantic fantasy featuring Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah. The film was both a critical and commercial hit, solidifying Howard's reputation as a director who could blend heart, humor, and broad appeal. His success continued with films like Cocoon, Parenthood, and Willow. Each film demonstrated Howard's growing skill as a filmmaker, his ability to tell emotionally resonant stories without relying on spectacle. Then came his masterpiece, A Beautiful Mind. The 2001 biopic about mathematician John Nash earned Howard an Academy Award for Best Director, and the film won Best Picture. But even this triumph wasn't without controversy. Critics accused Howard of sanitizing Nash's life, omitting details like his bisexuality and a child born out of wedlock. Howard acknowledged the omissions but maintained that the film's focus was Nash's struggle with mental illness and his enduring marriage. What pained him most was the effect the backlash had on Nash himself. Ron Howard's relationship with his wife Cheryl is not just a Hollywood anomaly, it's a cornerstone of his life. The two met in high school in Burbank, California, when Ron was only 16 years old and already recognizable as Opie Taylor from The Andy Griffith Show. Cheryl, a writer and actress, wasn't fazed by his fame. What connected them wasn't celebrity. It was a shared sense of calm, values, and purpose. Just a few years later, they were married in 1975 and have been together ever since, a near unheard of feat in the film industry. Howard often credits Cheryl with being his anchor. In interviews, he speaks about her influence not with Hollywood gloss, but with real, grounded admiration. "She's unbelievably supportive and always has been," he said. "She's made so many sacrifices so I could pursue this crazy career." Through the decades, Cheryl has remained a private presence, rarely giving interviews, rarely appearing in the limelight. Yet those close to the Howards say her influence is everywhere in Ron's life. In the themes he gravitates toward: loyalty, perseverance, family, and in his centered, ego-free approach to storytelling. Couple shares 4 children, including actress and director Bryce Dallas Howard, who has followed her father's path with similar humility and drive. Ron and Cheryl made a deliberate choice early on to raise their family away from the Hollywood chaos, opting for a life focused on education, privacy, and emotional grounding. Cheryl often accompanied Ron to set when their children were young, not for appearances, but to keep the family close, even while he worked long days on films like Backdraft and Apollo 13. In a 2020 Instagram post celebrating their 45th wedding anniversary, Howard wrote, "I'm lucky. She's the love of my life, and she still makes me laugh." Quiet, steadfast devotion, not just to each other, but to their shared values, may be Ron Howard's greatest accomplishment. In a world where fame often consumes personal identity, he's built a life and a marriage rooted in authenticity. Cheryl hasn't just grounded Ron, she's shaped him, and through him, the stories he tells. Ron and Cheryl Howard's love story is one of the most enduring in Hollywood. They met in high school when both were just 16. Cheryl wasn't impressed by Ron's fame. She was drawn to his sincerity, his sense of humor, and his love for storytelling. Their first date was a simple night out in Ron's mint green Volkswagen Beetle. They saw a movie and shared a pizza. 5 years later, in 1975, they were married. The ceremony in Burbank, California was modest but heartfelt, attended by friends, family, and a few cast members from Happy Days. Over the decades, Cheryl has remained Ron's anchor. He often credits her with keeping him centered through the ups and downs of a high-profile career. Her handwritten notes of encouragement during tough shoots, her fierce independence, and her quiet strength have been essential to their enduring bond. Raised 4 children together, including actress Bryce Dallas Howard, Cheryl insisted on finishing college before getting married, a decision that Ron supported and admired. Their daughter Bryce once described her mother as a force of nature, someone who kept the entire family grounded. On their 50th wedding anniversary, Ron marked the occasion with a photo of them standing on a beach at sunset, writing, "Grateful for 50 amazing years and the family and experiences it has yielded. What an adventure downriver through calm, soothing waters and some tricky rapids as well." The year before, he surprised Cheryl by taking her for a drive in that same mint green Volkswagen Beetle from their first date. Their love story, much like Ron's career, has been about consistency, respect, and shared dreams. But not all of Ron Howard's experiences have been so heartwarming. In recent years, one collaboration left him deeply disappointed. In 2020, he directed Hillbilly Elegy, a film adaptation of J.D. Vance's memoir. At the time, Vance was not yet a political figure. Howard saw the story as a tale of perseverance, a young man overcoming poverty and addiction within his family to achieve success. Focused on the human aspects of the story, casting powerhouse actors like Amy Adams and Glenn Close. Howard's aim was not to make a political statement but to highlight resilience and family ties. Ron Howard's experience with Hillbilly Elegy was a deeply personal one, not just as a filmmaker, but as a humanist trying to bridge a widening cultural divide. When he chose to adapt J.D. Vance's memoir in 2020, Howard approached the project with his trademark empathy. He wasn't interested in exploiting poverty or politicizing pain. He wanted to tell a story about generational struggle, addiction, family loyalty, and survival. He cast Amy Adams and Glenn Close in raw, unglamorous roles, and poured his heart into depicting the complexity of Appalachian life without condescension. But after the film's release, Vance's transformation into a hard-right political figure stunned Howard. A man who once spoke with nuance about the economic and social challenges facing working-class Americans now trafficked in partisan rhetoric and culture war talking points. As Vance aligned himself with Donald Trump and adopted increasingly aggressive political positions, Howard found himself reflecting on the disconnect between the memoir he adapted and the politician Vance had become. In subtle but firm comments during press interviews, Howard didn't hide his disappointment. "Made a film about what I thought was a human journey," he told the New York Times. "I didn't anticipate it becoming a political football." For Howard, who has spent his career championing stories that humanize people on both sides of ideological divides, the shift felt like a betrayal, not just personally, but artistically. Behind the scenes, the experience seemed to weigh on him. Friends noted that Howard had grown more cautious about adapting true stories, especially those still unfolding. The situation served as a reminder of the risks involved when filmmakers try to interpret real-life narratives. People change, and so do their messages. Yet, true to form, Howard didn't use the experience to attack. He used it to reflect. If the story helped anyone understand someone else's struggle, even for a moment, he said in a later interview, then it was worth it. In the end, Hillbilly Elegy became more than just a film, it became a mirror. Not only for the audience, but for the artist himself, who realized that sometimes the people we try hardest to understand will still go in directions we can't follow. Howard later remarked, "People change. And sometimes they change so much you no longer know who they are." The disappointment wasn't just political, it was personal. He had invested his heart into that film, and now he questioned whether he had inadvertently elevated a figure whose beliefs he couldn't support. Reminded him, in some ways, of his early years on the Andy Griffith Show, when he had to smile and perform alongside someone who never made him feel seen. Even as a child, Ron learned how to separate performance from reality. He understood that just because something looks warm on screen doesn't mean it feels warm in real life, and that lesson stayed with him. It made him a more careful storyteller, a more empathetic director, but it also made him more wary of those who smile for the camera while hiding something else entirely. Ron Howard's personal and professional journey has always reflected an unusual blend of humility and influence. Despite decades of fame, Howard is rarely at the center of scandal or gossip. That's no accident. He's deliberately built a life grounded in family and integrity. Married to his high school sweetheart, Cheryl Howard, since 1975, their relationship has been a rarity in Hollywood, steadfast and largely private. Together, they raised 4 children, including actress Bryce Dallas Howard, who has followed in her father's footsteps with her own thoughtful, character-driven performances and directorial efforts. But Howard's calm exterior doesn't mean his life has been without conflict or challenge. He's spoken openly about the emotional difficulty of transitioning from a child actor into an adult role in Hollywood, a time when roles dried up and he had to fight to be taken seriously behind the camera. His pivot to directing wasn't instantly embraced. Studios were hesitant. Industry insiders didn't see Opie as a serious filmmaker. Yet, Howard quietly proved them wrong, project by project, year by year. Recent years, he's also had to reckon with disappointment in personal relationships, most notably with those in the public eye whose values diverge dramatically from his own. Though he rarely names names, Howard's subtle public remarks have suggested disillusionment with former friends or collaborators who embrace divisive ideologies. Rather than engage in online debates, he lets his work speak for him. Films and documentaries, often centering on decency, perseverance, and empathy, serve as a quiet rebuke to a world that sometimes rewards cruelty and spectacle. Howard's consistency is perhaps his greatest achievement. In an industry addicted to reinvention and reinvention again, he has evolved without abandoning who he is. His belief in truth, character, and purpose has shaped not just the stories he tells, but the legacy he's building. Whether spotlighting ordinary heroes in Apollo 13 or exploring the complexities of genius in A Beautiful Mind, Howard reminds us that greatness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply shows up, works hard, listens, and speaks only when it truly matters. Ron Howard's journey from child star to Oscar-winning director is more than just a career arc, it's a masterclass in reinvention. While many child actors fade into obscurity or struggle to shed their early personas, Howard quietly transitioned behind the camera with a kind of grace and discipline that's rare in Hollywood. His directorial debut came in 1977 with Grand Theft Auto, a modest action comedy produced by Roger Corman. But even in that scrappy little film, Howard showed what would become his signature, a knack for pacing, character-driven storytelling, and finding heart in the chaos. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, he steadily built a reputation as a filmmaker who could balance emotional depth with commercial appeal. Films like Cocoon, Parenthood, and Apollo 13 revealed a director who was equally comfortable exploring science fiction, heartfelt comedy, and historical drama. His attention to detail, especially in portraying real-life figures and events, became a hallmark of his work. Perhaps most famously, A Beautiful Mind 2001 earned Howard an Academy Award for Best Director, and it wasn't just because the film was well-made. It was because it treated mental illness with empathy and complexity without ever slipping into caricature. That kind of emotional intelligence and ability to tell human stories without judgment sets Howard apart. Behind the scenes, he's also known for his kindness and professionalism. Actors routinely praise his calm demeanor and collaborative style. He doesn't shout or dominate, he listens. And that quality, ironically, may stem from his early days on the Andy Griffith Show, where Griffith himself mentored young Ron in humility, patience, and storytelling. In recent years, Howard has expanded into documentaries and series through his production company, Imagine Entertainment. He's championed projects that explore everything from the Beatles to the Paradise Fire in California. Always curious, always evolving. So yes, that whistling boy on the dirt road grew up, but more importantly, he grew wiser. Ron Howard never stopped learning, never stopped caring, and never stopped telling stories that remind us what it means to be human.